You are not ready for what's about to go down. They're weeks of silence and speculation. Jim Jones has finally broken his silence on Chrissy's jaw-dropping confession. And let me tell you, the fallout is even more explosive than anyone could have imagined. The courtroom confession already had fans reeling with tears, betrayal, and accusations flying faster than the news could even keep up. But nobody expected Jim to respond the way he did, and in his own words. For the first time, we're hearing the raw, unfiltered truth from the man himself. Witnesses say Jim's reaction has left the family torn apart and the entire hip-hop community stunned. As details of his heartbreak pour out, it's clear this isn't just another celebrity breakup. It's a full-blown emotional reckoning. With secrets spilling and alliances shattering, insiders close to the couple revealed that Jim's pain runs deeper than anyone realized. And now, for the first time since Chrissy's bombshell, he's finally letting the world in on his side of the story. What did Jim say in his heartbreaking response? How did he handle the betrayal from the woman he once called his everything? And will there be any chance for forgiveness? Or is this the end for hip-hop's once golden couple? Fans everywhere are watching, emotions are running high, and social media is ablaze. Buckle up, because this isn't just a confession. It's the beginning of a new chapter, and it's messier than anyone imagined. Stay tuned, you won't want to miss a second. When the news first broke about Chrissy's confession in that crowded courtroom, fans thought they had seen the peak of drama. But as everyone soon learned, that was just the beginning. Jim Jones, a man known for his swagger, loyalty, and unbreakable exterior, had been struck silent by betrayal, but not for long. Days passed. The internet exploded with theories, rumors, and endless reactions. Some said Jim was devastated. Others claimed he was plotting his next move in silence. The only person who really knew the truth was Jim himself, and for nearly a week, he refused to say a single word. Meanwhile, the world outside Jim's closed doors was chaos. Paparazzi camped outside his house. Bloggers refreshed his social media, every few minutes waiting for a hint of a statement. Chrissy, who had dropped the bombshell about her affair in open court, had retreated from the spotlight, refusing all interviews and calls. Everyone wanted answers, but Jim was nowhere to be seen. That silence only made the anticipation more intense. Fans argued online about who was right, who was wrong, and whether this was the final straw for hip-hop's most notorious couple. Behind the scenes, Jim wasn't hiding out of fear. He was processing everything, and the pain cut deeper than not any lyric he'd ever written. Insiders say he barely slept, wandering from room to room, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every promise Chrissy ever made to him. His mother, Mama Jones, tried to comfort him, but even her tough love couldn't reach him. Jim's closest friends, guys who'd known him since childhood, stopped by to check on him, but all they got were silent nods and empty stares. "Bro, you gotta eat," his friend Tone said one afternoon, setting takeout on the kitchen counter. Jim just shook his head. "I ain't hungry." Tone watched him for a moment, worry all over his face. "This ain't you, Jim. You gotta talk to somebody." Jim stared at the wall, fists clenched. "Who am I supposed to talk to?" "The world. They all want the same thing." A show, it was true. Every TV show, blog, and podcast wanted a piece of his pain. People who'd never cared about Jim and Chrissy's love story before were suddenly obsessed. But Jim wasn't ready to hand his heartbreak over to the world. Not yet. As the days crawled by, Jim's mother became more and more restless. She paced the living room, phone in hand, ready to defend her son at any moment. "I told you about that girl," she muttered one evening. "I told you, Jimmy. Women like that, they break men like you." "Ma, not now," Jim said, voice flat. But Mama Jones wasn't one to be silenced. "You loved her too hard," she insisted. "Too loyal. That's why it hurt so much." Meanwhile, fans were glued to their screens, dissecting every detail of Chrissy's confession. Clips of the court moment went viral. TikTokers reenacted the scene, some taking Chrissy's side, others calling her out. Memes flooded the internet, with hashtags like #TeamJim and #ChrissyScandal trending for days. Old photos of the couple resurfaced, smiling at award shows, laughing at cookouts, holding hands like nothing could ever break them. Now every image looked different. Every smile seemed fake. Every hug a lie waiting to be uncovered. But the silence from Jim only made things worse. His label called, desperate for him to make a statement. "You gotta control the narrative," his manager begged. "Right now, people are saying whatever they want. You gotta tell your side." Jim ignored the calls, ignored the texts. All he wanted was a moment to breathe, but even that felt impossible. Then, on the fourth night after Chrissy's confession, Jim got a text from an unknown number. The message was simple: "You deserve the truth. Meet me." He stared at the screen, heart pounding. He didn't know who sent it, but deep down, he had a feeling. He got dressed, grabbed his keys, and slipped out the back door, avoiding the cameras camped at the front. The city felt colder than usual as Jim drove through the empty streets. His mind raced with questions. Was it Chrissy? Was it someone else with more secrets to share? When he arrived at the address, his suspicions were confirmed. Chrissy was waiting for him, standing under a streetlight, arms crossed, eyes swollen from crying. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy and sharp. Finally, Chrissy broke it. "I'm sorry, Jim." He didn't answer. He just looked at her, waiting for more. "I messed up," she said, voice trembling. "I know that, but I had to tell the truth. I couldn't keep living a lie. Not to you, not to myself." Jim shook his head, pain written all over his face. "You had to tell the truth in court, in front of everybody." "I thought if I told you alone, you'd never believe me," Chrissy whispered. "Or maybe I just wanted, I don't know, to hurt less." That stung. Jim turned away, trying to hide the tears threatening to fall. "So who is he?" asked, voice barely above a whisper. Chrissy hesitated. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me," Jim said, turning back to her. "You say you loved me. You say you still do? But you lied for a year, and now you want me to just let it go." Tears streamed down Chrissy's cheeks. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know the truth." Jim's voice cracked. The truth is, you broke me. I don't know if I can ever trust anyone again." They stood there, two broken people under a cold city light, neither able to move forward or back. After a few minutes, Jim walked away. Leaving Chrissy alone with her regrets, he drove 4 hours. The city a blur outside his window. Memories flashed before his eyes. The first time he met Chrissy, the laughs, the fights, the makeups and breakups. Now, all of it felt like it belonged to someone else. When he finally made it home, the sun was rising. Jim sat on his porch, head in his hands, trying to make sense of everything. But the pain was too much. For the first time in his life, Jim Jones, the man who'd survived the streets, the industry, the world, felt truly defeated. As the neighborhood woke up, Jim's phone buzzed again. "I didn't want it to go like this," Jim began, his voice rough. "But since everybody's talking about my pain, I might as well talk about it too." The chat exploded with support, hearts flying across the screen. Some begged him to take Chrissy back. Others told him to stay strong and never forgive. Jim ignored the chaos and kept going. "I gave that woman everything," he said, shaking his head. "My love, my loyalty, my trust. I never thought I'd be the one sitting here having to explain why I'm the one who feels betrayed. But here we are." As he spoke, flashes of pain crossed his face. He talked about the first time he met Chrissy, how she challenged him, pushed him, made him believe in real love. "Thought we were forever. he admitted, even when things were rough. Especially when they were rough. Someone commented, "Do you still love her?" Jim paused, staring at the question for a long time before answering. "Love doesn't just disappear," he finally said. "It just changes. Now it hurts. But yeah, a part of me still does." As the live went on, Jim got real. He spoke about the rumors, how hard it was to see people he trusted whispering behind his back. How old friends disappeared overnight, afraid of picking sides. When you're winning, everybody's your friend. When you're hurting, only the real ones show up, he said. Shout out to Tone. Shout out to my moms. Shout out to the fans who sent love instead of hate. The most shocking moment came when Jim started reading messages he'd received since the confession. 1. From a woman he didn't know, read. "You showed men it's okay to feel." Jim looked up, eyes glistening. "I ain't never been scared to show my heart," he said quietly. "But right now, my heart feels like it got ripped out my chest." He talked about the struggle of being public with your pain. People think just because you're on TV, you signed up for this. But pain don't care about cameras. Heartbreak is heartbreak, whether you've got 1,000,000 followers or none. Then, in a move that shocked everyone, Jim invited his mother to join the live. Mama Jones entered the frame looking fierce but tired. She hugged her son, then turned to the camera. "Let me tell y'all something," she said, voice sharp. "My son loved Chrissy more than life itself. I warned him, but he had to find out the hard way. Don't you ever think you're weak for feeling pain. You're strong for standing in it." Fans lit up the chat, some agreeing with Mama Jones, others calling her out for stirring the pot. But Jim just nodded, a sad smile on his face. "I know my mom had my back," he said, "even when I didn't listen." Sometimes you gotta get your heart broken to see who's really in your corner. The live lasted almost an hour, with Jim answering questions, sharing memories, and even cracking a few jokes about how he was about to drop the saddest mixtape in history. But behind the humor was a real, raw vulnerability that made even his critics feel for him. As the live ended, Jim thanked everyone who tuned in. "This ain't the end of my story," he said. "I'm down, but I'm not out. I promise you, I'm coming back stronger. And when I do, you'll see the real me. Not just the rapper, not just the reality star, but the man who learned how to get up after getting knocked down." When he signed off, social media exploded. Clips from the live went viral, with fans praising Jim's honesty and strength. The hip-hop community, which often hides its pain behind bravado, rallied around him. Artists, influencers, and even athletes sent him messages of support, telling him he was inspiring a new kind of courage in men everywhere. But while the public cheered, Tease's personal world was still in pieces. The pain didn't just disappear because of a live video. His home felt emptier than ever, every room a reminder of what he'd lost. At night, sleep escaped him, and he found himself replaying every detail, every fight, every apology. That's when things took another turn. Late one night, Jim received an anonymous tip. A message that read, "You don't know the whole story. Chrissy wasn't the only one keeping secrets." The next day, a package arrived at Jim's door. Inside was a folder filled with photos, texts, and receipts. It was evidence proof of another betrayal, this time from someone even closer to Jim than Chrissy. The pages showed his best friend Tone meeting with Chrissy behind his back months before the affair came to light. Jim's single quotes as hands shook as he went through the files. Betrayal burned in his chest all over again. Was this why Tone was always around? Was he the reason Jim was kept in the dark? Unable to process it alone, Jim called his mother. "Ma, you need to see this," he said, voice barely steady. Mama Jones arrived within minutes. Together, they sifted through the evidence, piecing together a new layer of heartbreak. "Baby, sometimes the devil comes dressed as family," she whispered. The revelation left Jim reeling. Just when he thought he'd hit rock bottom, another trapdoor opened. Trust, already broken by Chrissy, was shattered by his own brother. Fans who had praised Tone for sticking by Jim now questioned his loyalty. Rumors swirled, was this a setup? Was Tone trying to sabotage Jim's relationship for his own gain? As Jim struggled with this new betrayal, the world kept watching. News outlets picked up the story, dissecting every detail. Fans argued over who to believe, with some insisting Tone was innocent and others certain he'd played a role in Chrissy's secret life. Jim, exhausted and heartbroken, withdrew again. He stopped answering calls, turned off his phone, and vanished. From social media, the only person he allowed in was his mother, who refused to leave his side. Meanwhile, Chrissy, who had been keeping a low profile, resurfaced. She posted a long, emotional video apologizing not just to Jim, but to his family, his fans, and even to Tone. "I hurt a lot of people," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "But I never meant to destroy you, Jim. I was lost. I hope one day you find it in your heart to heal." The video went viral, sparking another wave of debate online. Was Chrissy genuinely sorry, or was she just trying to save face? Fans were divided, and for the first time, even some of her supporters started to turn on her. While the internet raged, Jim sat in silence, the weight of two betrayals pressing down on him. But deep inside, something shifted. He realized that no matter what anyone said, no matter who was to blame, he was the only one who could decide how the story ended. As dawn broke, Jim got up, walked to the window, and took a deep breath. He wasn't sure what came next, but he knew one thing: he wouldn't let heartbreak define him forever. As the sun crept through the blinds, Jim stood in his living room, staring at the quiet city outside. The world was wide awake, but inside his home, time moved slowly. Every second felt heavy, every memory sharp. The echoes of Chrissy's apology and the shock of Tone's possible betrayal weighed on him like a stone. Fans might have seen a man coming undone, but deep down, something inside Jim was fighting its way to the surface, a stubborn resolve to reclaim his peace. Mama Jones was already in the kitchen, clanging pans, acting like nothing was wrong. But every so often, she'd glance over at Jim, her eyes full of questions she never asked aloud. Jim's phone buzzed on the counter, unread messages piling up, some from reporters, some from old friends, some from numbers he didn't recognize. For the first time in days, he picked it up, scrolling through the flood of texts. One caught his eye, a message from his old mentor, Stax. "Pain don't last, soldier. Only lessons do. Call me when you're ready." Jim thought about that for a minute. Stax had been through it all: prison, fame, heartbreak, and still came out on top. Maybe it was time for Jim to stop running and start searching for answers. Even if he didn't know where to start, he picked up the phone and dialed. Stax answered on the second ring. "Voice, you going out?" she asked. "Yeah." "I need to know who's with me and who's against me." Mama nodded, pride and worry mixed on her face. "Remember, baby family don't always mean loyalty." Jim kissed her on the forehead before heading out. At Stax's house, the mood was different. Stax was a legend in the game, a man who'd earned every scar and every stripe. He welcomed Jim in, then poured 2 glasses of whiskey. "Let's talk," Stax said, motioning to the worn-out couch. Jim sat, the leather creaking beneath him. "I don't know where to start." "Start with the truth. What's eating you alive?" Jim hesitated, but then it poured out: the pain, the betrayal, the confusion over Chrissy, the evidence against Tone, and the ache of feeling like he'd lost everything that mattered. Stax listened, face unreadable, until Jim finally ran out of words. For a long moment, the room was silent except for the hum of the city outside. Stax finally spoke. "I've been where you at, Jim. I had my own brother stab me in the back. Pain. Make you want to burn everything down. But you gotta decide if you want revenge or if you want peace." Jim stared into his glass. "What if I can't have either?" You can, Stack said quietly. But first you gotta confront them. Not online, not through texts, face to face. You owe yourself that much. The words hit home. For days, Jim had been hiding behind screens and rumors, letting other people tell his story. But if he really wanted closure, he had to take back the narrative directly. That night, Jim sent 2 messages. The first, to Tone, need to talk, face to face tonight. The second, to Chrissy, I deserve answers. Meet me tomorrow. Both replied within minutes. Tone agreed to come over while Chrissy hesitated, then finally said, I'll be there. The showdown with Tone came first. Jim sat in his living room, the silence heavy as he waited. When Tone finally walked in, he looked nervous, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes darting. You got something to say? Jim asked, voice low. Tone nodded, looking ashamed. I ain't gonna lie. I met with Chrissy, but it wasn't what you think. She reached out to me, bro. She was lost and she wanted to talk to somebody who understood you. Jim's jaw clenched. So you went behind my back. I should have told you, Tone admitted, but I swear I wasn't part of anything shady. I just didn't want to make it worse. It made it worse anyway, Jim shot back, voice rising. I trusted you. You were my brother. Tone's eyes glistened. I'm sorry, man. I messed up. The words hung in the air. For a minute, it looked like Jim might explode. But instead, he just shook his head, the fight going out of him. I lost Chrissy because of lies, Jim said. I can't lose my brother the same way. Just don't ever keep secrets from me again. Tone nodded, relief and regret battling in his expression. Never again. The 2 men sat in silence, the unspoken pain between them starting slowly. To mend. The next day brought a different kind of tension. Chrissy arrived at Jim's house, looking nothing like the woman from the court or the internet. No makeup, hair pulled back, eyes red. She stepped inside, hands trembling. Jim didn't waste time. Why'd you do it, Chrissy? Why him? Why me? Why us? Chrissy stared at the floor. I was lonely, Jim. I felt like we were together, but I was always alone. You were there, but your heart was somewhere else. I needed to feel seen. Jim shook his head, pain flashing in his eyes. So you found someone else to see you? I made a mistake, she whispered. I know I did, but I didn't do it to hurt you. I lost myself, Jim. And by the time I realized it, I couldn't turn back. They talked for hours, voices rising and falling, both crying at points, both venting years of pain and unmet expectations. Chrissy begged for forgiveness, not just for cheating, but for letting their love rot in silence instead of fighting for it. Jim admitted his own flaws, the way he sometimes shut her out, chased fame, and let their connection fade in the noise of life. By the end, neither of them had the strength to fight anymore. I don't know if we can fix it, Jim said quietly, but I know I need to heal. Chrissy nodded, tears falling again. I want that for you, for both of us. When she left, Jim felt lighter, not happy, but less burdened by anger. He had finally said everything that needed to be said, heard everything he needed to hear as the door closed. Jim realized something. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about letting someone back in. Maybe it was about letting go. Outside, a storm was brewing, rumors, headlines, fans hungry for the next chapter. But inside, for the first time, Jim felt a small piece of peace beginning to grow. The hours after Chrissy left felt different for Jim. The silence in the house was no longer suffocating, it was cleansing. He sat by the window for a long time, letting the sound of rain outside wash away some of the pain. For the first time since the courtroom confession, he allowed himself to imagine a future where the weight of betrayal didn't define every day. As word got out that Chrissy and Jim had finally spoken face to face, the online world went wild. Gossip blogs ran headlines like closure or comeback. And Jim and Chrissy's final showdown, was it goodbye or one last chance? Fans argued nonstop, dissecting every possible outcome. Some believed the couple could still work things out. Others claimed that once trust was broken, nothing could ever truly be healed. Meanwhile, Tone was determined to make amends. He showed up every day, bringing food, making Jim laugh, and refusing to let his friends sink into isolation. One afternoon, while they watched old music videos and roasted each other about their style, Tone got serious. "Double quotes, bro. I know I said sorry, but that's not enough. I want you to know I'm here for whatever you need. If you want to rebuild, if you want to move on, if you want to go full savage on your next album, I got you." Jim looked at his friend, finally seeing him not as a possible betrayer, but as someone who'd made a mistake and was trying to fix it. "Thanks, Tone. I need real ones around me right now." The two hugged, the moment sealing a new layer of trust. But while Jim's personal life was beginning to stabilize, the outside world was heating up. Chrissy's emotional apology video kept trending, and fans' opinions shifted by the hour. Some felt for her, sharing stories of their own mistakes and the pain of regret. Others dragged her mercilessly, insisting she didn't deserve forgiveness. Influencers started taking sides, and it seemed like every celebrity podcast wanted a piece of the drama. Then came the next twist. Jim received an offer to appear on a live TV special, billed as an exclusive tell-all. At first, he wanted nothing to do with it. The last thing he wanted was to put his pain on display for ratings. But after days of consideration and several long talks with Mama Jones and Tone, he realized that telling his story might help him finally move on and maybe help others who were struggling with betrayal too. He agreed, but with strict conditions: no fake narratives, no sensational editing, and Chrissy would not be ambushed or dragged if she chose to participate. When the special was announced, anticipation hit a fever pitch. Fans lined up outside the studio hours before, desperate to be in the audience. On the night of the show, Jim arrived dressed simply. No jewelry or flash, just a man ready to face the world. The host opened gently, asking Jim what had been the hardest part since Chrissy's confession. Jim took a deep breath. "Honestly, the hardest part was realizing that love isn't enough to keep two people together. You can give someone your whole heart and still lose them. But that doesn't mean you stop loving yourself." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. The host then asked if Jim and Chrissy had spoken since the drama exploded. "Yeah, we talked," Jim replied. "Not just about the affair, but about everything that led us there. Nobody's innocent in a breakup like this." "I made mistakes too," the crowd murmured, impressed by his honesty. The host asked if there was any hope for reconciliation. Jim shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "I think some things are too broken to put back together, but I forgive her. I forgive myself too." Unexpectedly, the host announced they had a video message from Chrissy. Her face appeared on the big screen, looking sincere and vulnerable. Double quotes, "Jim, if you're watching, I just want you to know how sorry I am. You deserved better from me. Hope you find happiness even if it's not with me." Jim watched the message. Quietly, when it ended, he wiped his eyes and faced the audience. "It's gonna take time, but I'll be okay." The moment went viral before the show even finished airing. Social media lit up with clips of Jim's.com heartfelt responses. Fans called it the most real moment on TV this year. Even those who had doubted him or sided with Chrissy praised his strength and vulnerability. In the days that followed, life began to change for Jim. He started writing music again, pouring all his pain and lessons into new lyrics. He met with friends he'd pushed away during the drama, repairing bonds he'd almost lost. He even agreed to see a therapist, determined to break the cycle of pain that had haunted him for so long. The support from his family never wavered. Mama Jones cooked his favorite meals, teased him about getting back out there, and promised to screen any new women he dated. "Ain't nobody gonna hurt my baby?" Again, she joked, making Jim laugh for the first time in weeks. Meanwhile, Chrissy quietly disappeared from the public eye. She moved out of the city, focused on her own healing, and began working with organizations that help women rebuild after betrayal and heartbreak. Occasionally, she'd post a quote or a poem about growth and forgiveness, but never directly about Jim. Fans speculated, but she kept her private life exactly that -private tone. Having learned from his own mistakes, became one of Jim's biggest supporters. Together, they worked on a project dedicated to men's mental health, using their story to encourage others to talk about pain instead of hiding it. But just when things seemed to be settling down, a new rumor hit the blogs, this time involving another woman from Jim's past. Someone who claimed she had proof of a secret relationship that overlapped with his time with Chrissy. The internet exploded again, and fans braced themselves for another round of drama. But instead of getting caught in the storm, Jim took control. He released a statement on his own terms. "I've told my truth. I've made my peace. If anyone else has something to say, that's on them. I'm moving forward. For the first time in a long time, I choose me." The response was overwhelmingly positive. Fans flooded his page with messages of support, thanking him for showing what real healing looks like. Old friends reached out, saying they were proud. Even critics had to admit that Jim had handled himself with grace. As the story moved from tabloids to memory, Jim found himself sleeping better, smiling more, and slowly rebuilding the life he thought he'd lost. He realized that heartbreak didn't end his story. It started a new chapter. One built on truth, forgiveness, and self-love. And while the world might never stop gossiping for Jim, the noise had finally faded into the background. As summer turned to fall, Jim Jones was finally finding his rhythm again. The city no longer felt like a maze of Memory's Edge Street. Each corner, each familiar face wasn't just a reminder of betrayal, but a testament to everything he'd survived. His mornings started with long walks, sometimes with Tone, sometimes alone. Headphones in, letting the music of the city drown out the last of the pain. Fans noticed the change too. They commented on his new posts, saying his smile looked real for the first time in months. "Healing looks good on you," King One wrote. Another said, "We watched you break, and now we get to watch you rebuild." For the first time in ages, Jim replied to a few of them, gratitude pouring through every word. It wasn't all perfect. There were still rough nights. Every now and then, he'd wake up from dreams that felt too much like the past. Sometimes, he'd hear Chrissy's laugh in the back of his mind, and a dull ache would twist in his chest. But these moments came less often. They didn't leave him gasping for air anymore. In one of their late-night talks, Tone asked, "You ever think you'll love like that again?" Jim took his time before answering. "Maybe, but it'll be different. I've changed. I know myself better now." Tone nodded, understanding more than words could say. The media, still hungry for a fresh twist, tried to stir up more drama. Gossip blogs teased stories about Jim's love life, wondering who he'd be seen with next. But Jim stayed away from the mess, focused on his own journey. When approached by a popular reality TV producer about doing a dating show comeback, Jim laughed and shook his head. "Not everything's for the cameras," he said, finally drawing his own boundaries. The biggest shift, though, was in Jim's music. His upcoming album was already being called the most honest work of his career. The lead single, titled "Rebuild," dropped at midnight, and within hours, it shot to the top of the charts. The lyrics were raw, full of pain and hope and truth. Fans and critics alike praised his vulnerability, calling the song the anthem of healing for a generation that's learned to love itself after loss. Meanwhile, Chrissy continued her work in silence, staying out of the spotlight. Word spread that she had started speaking at private workshops, sharing her story not for fame, but to help others heal. Some fans still blamed her, others quietly rooted for her. But Chrissy's new motto was simple: Growth isn't for the world to see. It's for your own soul. As months passed, life for Jim settled into a new normal. He reconnected with old friends, began mentoring younger artists, and, with Tone's encouragement, even tried his hand at cooking, sometimes burning more than he saved, but always laughing at himself along the way. Mama Jones watched all of it with pride, convinced her son had come out the other side stronger than ever. But there was one last chapter to be written. One final moment that would bring everything full circle. On a crisp autumn evening, Jim hosted a private dinner for his closest friends and family. The vibe was warm, the air filled with laughter, old stories, and good music. Near the end of the night, Jim stood and tapped his glass for attention. "I just want to thank everyone here," he began, voice steady but emotional. "Not just for being by my side through all the drama, but for reminding me who I am when I forget. It's easy to lose yourself when the world is watching. It's harder to find your way back. But because of all of you I did." There were tears, hugs, and applause. Even Mama Jones wiped away a tear, though she'd never admit it after dinner. As the guests trickled out, Jim stepped outside onto the balcony, the city lights stretching out below him. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through his contacts, and on a whim sent a message to Chrissy. "Hope you're doing okay. Thank you for the closure." There was no reply for a while. But just before midnight, his phone buzzed. "I'm glad you found peace. We both deserved it." Jim smiled, feeling the last piece of his heart finally settle. The past didn't haunt him anymore, was just a story that shaped the man he had become in the end. Jim's reaction to Chrissy's confession wasn't just a moment for the blogs or the fans. It was a reckoning. It's a test of love, loyalty, and the courage to face the truth even when it broke him. The family had been divided. Friends were tested. The world watched with bated breath. But through it all, Jim didn't just survive, he transformed. He learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight or to forget, but to forgive yourself and the person who hurt you. To step out of the ashes, not with bitterness, but with hope. As the city slept, Jim Jones stood tall on that balcony, finally free, finally whole, finally ready for whatever came next. And so, the story that gripped an entire fan base finally comes to an end, not with a scandalous fight or a dramatic reunion, but with something much rarer: honest healing. Jim Jones didn't just break his silence, he broke the cycle. He let the world see him at his lowest, faced the betrayal head-on, and still chose to rise. That's a kind of courage you don't see every day. And fans everywhere are still reeling from every twist, every confession, every tear-stained apology that played out before their eyes. But with every ending, there's always a new beginning. The questions still linger. Can a heart really recover after such a public, painful break? Can forgiveness lead to something stronger than trust? And what does it mean for love when the world is always watching, always waiting for the next chapter of someone else's life to fall apart?